this game because every time I would go into panic mode trying to get Baby Mario back, it would just make it worse because I would be super erratic and start hitting other enemies, and then it would bounce me back and I'd lose more time, and then eventually they'd take Baby Mario away. So keep your cool. That's the lesson I learned.
The government came and took your baby?
Yeah, the Bowser government.
Hi, I'm John, and I'm a gamer.
Hi, John!
Gaming has come a long way over the last several decades. The debate on whether the medium is art has largely ended with a very conclusive yes, and around the world we're finally seeing people treat it with more of the respect that it deserves. With that in mind, and because I'm just as much of a game talker as I am a game player, I went around to all my gamer buddies to enlist their help in discussing games as art. So, if you love gaming as much as I do, then join us. Trust me, you're among friends. Listen in as we discuss the themes, gameplay, and whatever else comes to mind. It's like a book club, but gaming. Today's topic?
Yoshi's Island. All right, hello and welcome to the 9th episode of the Book Club at Gaming podcast. I'm your host, John, and with me today are Russell.
What's up?
And Joel.
Hey, hey.
And we're going to be talking about Yoshi's Island. I mean, Super Mario World 2. Such an interesting way to title it, and we're going to get into that in a little bit. But first, we just all listened to the main theme for the game, and just to kind of get the juices flowing, see what we're going to feel. I want to start with Russell, since it's your first time on the podcast. How did listening to that make you feel? Like, what did it bring to mind?
Okay, so I don't know if it's story time yet, but I do have some very distinctive memories of this game. It was actually one of the first, I'd say, proper games I ever played. And that opening theme, while it's not something that I think of associated with any Mario games, or it's not like it sticks in your head, but it does have that immediate just like click sense memory of, oh my God, I remember this time in my life. It's good. It's weirdly not iconic, but it is very memory evoking.
How about you, Joel?
Very much a lullaby, obviously. That's starting a few notes. And then this game, I hated when I played it years and years and years ago. And so it wasn't until probably a few months ago that I played it again and actually played it through. I'd never beaten it. But that music just makes me think of getting hit by those weird like clouds that make it feel like you're high. and the wah, and I remember just hating that as a kid, and that's one of the main reasons I stopped playing, because I was really bad. So it brings back that memory of giving up on this game, and that's why I'm so glad I actually went back and played it and beat it. It's like one of those unfinished things from my childhood.
Well, congrats. And what an interesting mechanic that makes for that. Like, it's something that has been done a lot recently in games. Like, I think of Grand Theft Auto 5, Catherine. Both of those games have mechanics where your motion is like altered by the amount of alcohol you've consumed in game. Yep. And it's like the first, and I know it's not alcohol doing it in Yoshi's Island, but it is like kind of like the precursor to having an inebriated style of walking in a game.
I think there might be some backlash today if this game came out, because basically they're saying that the baby got high, or Yoshi got high from those clouds.
while
caring for a baby.
Yeah, exactly.
I have a funny feeling they changed the name of those enemies in the U.S. media to fix it. I think I'm actually going to look that up, because I got a funny feeling they changed it from something in Japanese to like Dizzy Puff or something like that in the U.S. version. So I'm going to take a quick look at that, because I'm very curious.
Yeah, and while you're doing that, you were talking about story time. I think that was a good story to start with, Russell. And but you were talking about how the music you didn't think was too iconic, especially for a Mario game. I would disagree, but mainly because I grew up playing the game, and to me, like, whenever I heard that music, and I loved playing the game when I was young, even if I never finished it until I was much, much older. But I always loved the art style. I always loved how child-friendly it was, and, you know, the bright colors and everything. I think that the music box style for the intro song is super perfect, because it fits with that storybook aesthetic really well, but it's also got this kind of clumsiness, like you're using one of those wind up music boxes, but you yourself are not winding it at the correct tempo perfectly throughout. Like sometimes you're a little fast, sometimes you're a little slow. Like you can almost feel the little like little pieces clicking as the wheel passes over them as you turn it with a hand crank. I really appreciated that little touch to it. It was nice and clumsy, but like charming to me.
I agree. It's definitely one of the more unique musical pieces as far as Mario games goes. It's interesting though, because it is so distinct, but it still does feel like a Mario game. It kind of makes me feel the same way about if you've ever played Star Fox Adventures. It's a Star Fox game, but it's kind of like its own weird thing. But this kind of has the same vibes to me, the game itself, where it's like, yeah, this is a Mario game, but it's not quite Super Mario World. It's not quite Yoshi's Island. It's this kind of cool, weird hybrid. And I think the music is very fitting for that.
I'm glad you brought that up. The first question I did want to ask was, where does Yoshi's Island fit in with the mainline Mario games? And does it feel like, as it's titled, Super Mario World 2, or does it feel more like a spinoff?
Ooh, I got a thought on this one. This is very reminiscent of Mario, or just Mario 2, Super Mario 2, where it was just a whole different game. I mean, if the story behind Mario 2 is something a little different, but this game takes every art cue differently, every musical cue differently, even the characters, except for Mario, Bowser, and maybe Shy Guys, which I actually think Shy Guys were from 2. So this actually has a lot of elements of Mario 2 and kind of slightly ties that very discordant world back together in kind of Mario, but at the same time, everything is different about Yoshi's Island. If this wasn't Yoshi and didn't have Mario, this wouldn't really be a Mario game. It would just be a very well-constructed game. There's no elements of the original Mario world. There's no elements of anything Super Mario related. There's nothing with any of the Mario worlds at all, except for Mario, Baby Mario, and that's it. And Baby Bowser.
I thought the same thing playing through it. Yeah, you're so right. You could put any other character in the places of a few of them, and it would be a completely different. It could have been a spinoff or a completely different game, different characters, a new IP, whatever they wanted to do with it. But I do wonder why it deviated so far, because to me it doesn't feel like, I love Super Mario World, and I beat that game as a kid. And playing this one, it didn't feel anything like that. And mechanically, there were some similarities, but there was a lot of differences. The one thing that I think really, and I'm sure we'll get to this, but that turned me off from the game was the losing Baby Mario mechanic. It just drove me insane. And playing it again, those were like some of the most frustrating times where the baby is like flying up in the air and you're counting down and you're at 2 seconds and you're having a panic attack trying to get him, and then you lose him and he flies up and you have to restart. Quite frustrating.
Definitely,
to say the least.
One of the most frustrating mechanics in so much of gameplay history, in my opinion. It is by far one of the worst, if not poorly constructed. Like, I will say everything about Yoshi's Island for its time is incredibly well put together. Everything ties together. All the mechanics are crisp and sharp. The art style all just ties together. The movement, everything works well. And that mechanic, smartly put in there, just one of the worst mechanics when it comes to the overall enjoyment of the game. It wasn't even challenging. It was really just adding in a random element that could make your whole just ruin your gameplay. It was rough, but at the same time, it was unique. I'll give it that.
Do you think, John or Russell, do you think that's part of the reason why, though, that this game doesn't feel like a true sequel to Super Mario World? To me, that is one of the biggest factors that actually makes it feel so different, and it changes the gameplay so much because of it. Because, correct me if I'm wrong, but you can lose Baby Mario and you can still take hits as Yoshi, at least a few, before you die, which is so different from Mario games in general, where it's like if the enemy touches you if you're small, you're dead. So do you think that has anything to do with it feeling so different, or is it more than that?
I think it does. And I think this is part of why I don't really consider it to be a Mario game, is that even though Mario is in it, he has hardly any agency in the game. Like a Super Mario title, you should play largely as Super Mario. And while there are the little segments, I think, in this game where I think you can be like Super Baby Mario.
Very few.
With the cape.
Like 3 or 4.
There's like a couple of them. And they're kind of fun, but they're even on such a timer. Like, it's not something you can really play around with or enjoy. It's like it's just to get from point A to point B, or to collect a couple of collectibles and then right back to Yoshi. And I don't think there's anything wrong with playing. Like, obviously, it's a great game. I love this game. But it doesn't feel like Mario to me. And I think it's telling that in later Yoshi titles, Yoshi's Story, Yoshi's Woolly World, Yoshi's Crafted World, they not only took the Mario out of the title, but they took the Mario out of the game. And there were later installments in the Yoshi's Island series that kept babies in it, mostly Baby Mario, but a couple of others as well. But they didn't title them Super Mario Yoshi's Island 2. It was Yoshi's Island, Yoshi's New Island, so on and so forth. To backtrack real quick to the baby crying sound effect, I agree it's annoying and it's irritating. I also agree that it was designed to be so, but I also don't think it was necessary. I think that, like, just because there's an added sound effect of like a beep, 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 beep as the counter's going down behind the crying. And I think that is enough to add the stress that it's going for. Like, I don't need to be reminded that this whole game is basically an escort mission.
Can we agree that is right up there with the Sonic 2 drowning music in terms of just like pure stress?
I would say right below it. Like,
I haven't been blessed by that sound, so I don't know what the comparison is.
Oh my god. That is like the classic stress-causing video game sound. Just Sonic drowning, Baby Mario screaming. Probably,
okay,
yeah.
I'll look it up after the podcast.
I feel like there should be like a third thing there, but I can't think of one that's nearly as stressful as those two.
I'm trying to think of one, and I feel like there's the sound effect from the original Pokemon when you're low HP.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. There we go.
Yes. Incessant.
There's got to be a few other ones, but to piggyback on something a little bit about the Yoshi's Island universe and why it has such a different feel than any Mario game, outside of the art and the mechanics, the movement of the characters is very different. Like, it doesn't have the same very crisp. Like, I guess it's also technologically, this game is very, again, well executed and very well drawn. The Mario series, even with Super Mario World, was not quite as like fluffy. It was a bit more crisp, and it just doesn't feel, look, or act the same way as a Mario game. I mean, again, if you just took Mario out of the equation and, Yoshi wasn't a Nintendo character, this could have been just a really awesome dinosaur game. I don't know, something like that. But it doesn't have, the only thing it has in similarities are Mario mechanics. It has warp pipes, it has the star, that's honestly about it. Like, I can't think of anything else that is Mario adjacent other than invincibility and pipes. That really is about it. And maybe a few common enemies like Koopas and Shy Guys.
You made me think of something, just looking at the difference in art style, right? Super Mario World to me felt more grounded. It felt like you could kind of understand the world itself. But looking at the worlds in Super Mario World 2, at least when I was playing, everything was much more dreamlike, almost fantastical. And it almost felt like, like it's the storybook, right? Being told like this kind of crazy fairy tale. But or even that it was like a dream almost that Baby Mario was having. It just felt so weird at certain points in the game, and like the enemies and the stuff they did, and even just the levels themselves. And also touching on mechanics and as far as crispness, I know what you mean, and I think a lot of that is Yoshi is so floaty, and so there was a lot of times where I would be trying to make a really technical precise jump, and I would just like slide off or float off to the wrong way because he has that little like back and forth thing. You have to like hone it in to get him to land in the right spot. I think that also made it feel very different. from a control standpoint.
Yeah. And again, with that kind of dreamlike feel to it, um, I think that really does have so much to do with the art, but also the fact that you can, turn into a helicopter and, eat a watermelon and spit like seeds like a machine gun, or eat, an ice melon and blow ice. Like, these are things that are not at all in the Mario world. But also the amount of just additional gameplay and work that went into building that world was very prevalent. Whereas, I know that Super Mario World was not at all that was a pretty advanced game for when it came out. Yoshi's Island came out a good while after that with a lot more technology behind it and a lot more build and expertise behind it. But that doesn't mean that Super Mario World was not good. It was excellent. It was very much exactly what Mario was supposed to be, and in a world that was super different from all of the previous Mario games. I think also by that sense, thinking back on it, most Mario games are not exactly congruent in their worlds. If you think original Mario, Mario 2, Mario 3 are all similar, but very different how they feel. Super Mario World's clearly different, and then Yoshi's Island is equally different. So Mario's never had a consistent tone until, well, honestly, I guess I can't even say recently, because they're all still pretty different, because most of the more recent Marios are kind of rehashes of another Mario game. I mean, even 64 has things similar with 1.
I would say like the new Super Mario Bros. Franchise, it's an absurd naming idea at this point, because there's more in it than there were ever before. But it's got a pretty consistent art style throughout. It didn't change quite as much title to title as like all of those originals do. One thing that I do think carried over from Super Mario World into Yoshi's Island was the idea of like kind of a map that like each area has its own map. Yeah, like you start to see that in Mario 3, but in Super Mario World, you see how each area map leads into the next one. And it's not quite as clear in Yoshi's Island, but you do get to see like the overall map of Yoshi's Island as the baby's being passed off between Yoshis. I think that went a long way for me into making it feel like an actual like place. Like it was congruent in that way. Like each section led to another section to some degree. Not quite as tightly as Super Mario World did, where it's like, oh, I see a cave coming up. I bet in a couple of levels I'm going to be in a bunch of cave levels. But it was something.
It was a proper map. At least in Super Mario, it was a map of a flat plane of existence, kind of like, hey, here's your map. You're moving place to place. And again, with Yoshi's Island, there was kind of that rotating view of the island, but then it was just a storybook format where you're going from like story to story to story, which did actually work for whatever narrative there is to that game, which is pretty minimal. It did give some kind of feeling of progression and kind of that exploration of the map. Also, when you completed certain areas, it showed it on the map, which was nice. It was a nice touch, but it again, a little different with that book format, with the storybook format.
That kind of leads into a good point. What did you guys think of the story or plot and or narrative of Yoshi's Island?
Story's kind of lacking, but it's a Mario game. Like, what do you need to know? Save baby Mario. There you go. Progress through the levels, save Mario, big baddies trying to stop you, big baddie in this case being not that big and making other baddies big. It's a simple level-based comprehensible story. The narrative, I think I'm going to pass this off to someone else while I kind of stew on this one, because I think there are levels of complexity to it, but it still is simple.
Honestly, I'd probably need my memory jogged even to remember what the story is. So simple, like you said, Russell. It's literally, I'm also confused by the story because Bowser's trying to have baby Mario kidnapped, correct? At the beginning?
I think it was, if not baby Bowser.
Or Kamek.
Kamek was the one who's doing things, and I believe baby Bowser's at the end of everything. So it's like, this is baby Mario, baby Bowser, Kamek doing, whatever Kamek does, trying to kidnap baby Mario.
They were trying to take baby Mario to Bowser's castle, right? And then at the end, so what wasn't the whole goal to bring baby Mario back to his parents?
Yeah,
Just something
it
like
was
that.
it was to reunite Baby Mario with Baby Luigi,
Oh,
which
that's what it is.
is
Okay.
kind of funny because
That's
like so you have two kids, one of them was kidnapped, and you're like, oh, we got to go rescue the other one. Better bring the safe baby with us, like straight into the heart of enemy territory.
yeah, it was just and at the end when you're fighting Bowser, are we at what castle are we at? Bowser's castle?
Like a baby Bowser's castle. I don't know, just little Bowser's castle.
But why did we go there?
Narrative and story.
Because that's where
That's
Luigi is.
that's what's so confusing is yeah, so it's like we're going to get Luigi from Bowser's castle. Okay.
So let's
I,
let's reunite the brothers, even if that means they're both going to die in Bowser's castle.
I think the story is exactly what it needs to be for a Mario game, right? It's like Mario's stories are never complex. Narratively, I don't know, there's not much really to say. It's the game's plot is simple and it propels you to go through worlds in order to achieve said goal, right? Like I don't think it's complex. I don't think there's anything crazy that they're doing behind trying to tell this, deep narrative story. I think it's just meant to be a simple kids fairy tale type game. It is. I think there's other Mario games that maybe they don't. I was just going to say like slightly more in-depth plot, but for the most part, it's rescue Princess, Peach, rescue Luigi. Those are the two big ones that show up over time and time again. It's Luigi and Peach.
Yeah, and I would say though that out of every Mario game that had come up to that point, Yoshi's Island probably did do more with have more of a plot than any of the others. Like any other Mario game just sort of starts really, and then there might be like a little bit of a scene at the end. Like I think at the end of Mario 3 for the NES, there was like a little bit about him waking up and realizing it was all a dream. Or maybe that was Mario 2.
Those two.
But that didn't come until like you finished the game. Was it 2? Okay. But like with this one, it actually opens with a cut scene and a little bit of like a preamble along with that music. And to me, I think that definitely got me geared up for the adventure more. It's like, oh, like, there's some stakes here. Like my little bro or Mario's little bro is out there and he needs help. So I think like you're right, it's not a super complicated story, but you're also right. I don't think it really needed to be. It was just enough to give me incentive. I'm trying to remember whether Mario RPG had come out already by this point. I don't think it had, but if so, I would say the Mario RPG games all had some pretty relatively deep plots relative to like the side scrollers.
Relative to any other Mario game, yes, those were the Mario RPG series was excellent.
What did you guys think of Kamek as like a villain figure for the game? Because I know it's sort of at the end, it's sort of like, oh, was it really Kamek who's the main villain or Bowser? But really, the main antagonistic face that you're seeing throughout the adventure is Kamek, and she talks to you frequently. She's she's basically up to no good the entire time. So, what did you think of her?
It's got a bit of a back to Mario 2 again. It's who is this character? What is their entire purpose of existing here? What are they doing? Oh, hey, they have this thing they do. I mean, it's like, was it King Wart from Mario 2? It's like, who is, why? What is this character? What is this character? Clearly they want you dead, but okay. Kamek was just kind of there. It's like this entity wants the Yoshi stopped. And that is kind of where it ended. Kamek didn't really have anything going on. There wasn't even a connection. I think maybe the Kameks were a baddie in Super Mario World, maybe, but I don't remember.
I think they might have.
Yeah.
I think they might have been. I think they might have flown around
chucking magic
on broomsticks, and yeah. Okay, just touching back on this because I was looking it up. That's why I was so quiet earlier. This game came out in 95 and a Mario RPG came out in 96, which is kind of cool and interesting because I've only played a little bit of RPG, but it seems like maybe this was kind of their like connective piece from Mario World into Mario World 2 into something more unique in a way. And it kind of seems like they were experimenting with different ideas and then were like, hey, let's just do an RPG. That'll be cool. Anyway, wow, I'm so sorry. I'm just totally blanking. What was the question we were on that you were just answering, Russell?
Kamek.
Oh, okay, yeah. I loved Kamek. Because to me it was so used to other Mario games where you show up and Bowser's there and that's the boss of the level and you're like, or the world, and you're like, okay, you fight by Bowser. Maybe he's a little bit of a variant or does something different. But this, I liked what Kamek did, and that was create weird bosses out of normal organisms. Like the frog one comes to mind. I love the frog boss. Just kind of more quirky, and each boss had some slightly different tactics you had to employ in order to beat them. Again, yeah, the goal of Kamek is very simple. It's stop Yoshi, but I thought it worked well, and I actually liked the character. It was refreshing to me to see a different face at the end of each castle. Also, I'm not a big fan of the other games where Bowser has like all of his kids, and it's like literally a different baby Bowser in every single castle. And, is that in World? Super Mario World?
I think that was 3 that had the children.
Yeah, okay.
It was in both, but they became more, I think, a little bit more detailed in Super Mario World.
Yeah, I think you're right. But yeah, that's my take. I actually like Kamek.
I really like Kamek too, and for the same reason. I think that you actually get to see this villain do something. Like you said, she's actually checking in on you on your adventure. Like, oh man, you made it past the last barrier. Well, let me see if I can set up another one. And it's cool because her motivations in my eyes are a little bit twofold. Because she's trying to stop Yoshi, she's also trying to kidnap Mario still. But there's a little bit of depth to her. Like there are parts like before certain bosses. I think it's before the naval piranha. She just sort of cautions you, like, you should just turn back now. Like, kind of like she's reaching to the point where it's like, yeah, ideally I would kidnap Mario, but if not kidnapping Mario means also not having to deal with Yoshi anymore, then maybe that's worth it. Like, cut my losses. So it's a weird, and not a lot of depth, but it's like it's still a weird amount for a Mario game at that time. You also see like her tactics change a little bit throughout the game. Like for the most part, maybe she's making enemies giant, but then there's one boss battle where she's like, well, that's not working. Why don't I just shrink Yoshi? And then you end up in the stomach of the frog.
Yeah, that's actually one of my favorite. We'll talk about this. It's one of my questions actually, but that is one of my favorite bosses is the frog one, just because it's so weird and crazy.
We could get into that now if you guys want. Talk about favorite bosses.
Sure, why not?
You want to start, Joel?
Sure, yeah. I think honorable mention is the frog boss, but my favorite one, Raphael the Raven, which is the one that you get shot to the moon.
I'm gonna say that too.
Yeah, and just I remember because I'd never gotten this far as a kid, right? So this is the first time I'm seeing this. I think I got to World 3 as a kid, so I missed half the game. Yeah, I just remember like being shot to the moon and going, what? What? This is crazy. And the boss fight, I didn't love the mechanics, but it was just such a weird, unique setting, I guess. And just again, the art style is so dreamlike and so kind of crazy, like impossible, that it makes it much more fun. I thought so, at least.
I really loved the design on the moon for that fight too. Like you can see, like it's almost like it's been stitched together.
Yeah,
that was kind of cute.
Yeah,
that fight had its own kind of like epic feel for something like out of a Mario game. Like who the heck would have expected something like that? Like it was just way out of left field, but really cool. Also, I like Raphael's design. He's just a freaking blob with like a nose beak thing. I'm like, wait, what's going on here? Like
he looks like an Among Us character.
It really does. It's like it was such such a huge departure from like all style cues. Like, what is this creature?
It's true.
Visually, I would have guessed penguin before I guessed raven, even though it doesn't have a white belly.
Exactly. I would have guessed the same thing. So I've learned something today.
But I kind of like that it's a raven. Like it's like, oh, that's kind of cute. Like, okay, Yeah, I get it. I can get behind that.
Do you guys actually? So some, not all of them, but some of these bosses are just reused enemies that have been slightly altered or enlarged. Are you? Some people don't mind it. Some people hate that. As far as bosses go in games, like Destiny is really guilty of this. Is just taking a normal enemy and blowing them up to supersize and calling it a boss. I don't think this game is as bad because they don't do it to every character, but there are a few. The Koopa, the Piranha Plant, Big Boo. I like Big Boo though, so I think Big Boo gets a pass.
I think
Me
the only
too.
one in Yoshi's Island was the first boss for that, I think. Because that was Bert the Bashful, which was one of those bouncy dudes that only shows up in that level too, and just a supersized
Oh
version of
yeah,
that.
yep.
I think that was it, because the Naval Piranha had a different play mechanic. Then obviously, like Baby Bowser, unique play mechanic. I actually really enjoyed the Salva the Slime fight,
Yeah.
mostly because it kind of like once you play through a couple times and you learn how to bounce eggs, it became such a satisfying fight because you can take them down in like a few seconds if you just bounce your eggs around the room and just like didn't just chuck eggs directly at them. So as soon as you bounce it off two walls, it took off like a chunk of slime. It was a very satisfying fight. Also, the mechanics of that fight at the time with that very like fluidy, motiony, like blobs coming off, like that was pretty cool to see at the time because that was kind of advanced graphics for what that game was.
There's so much creativity behind the bosses. To answer your question real quick though, Joel, I actually like the idea of having a boss that's basically a souped up version of a normal enemy, just because it's sort of rather than just give me an entirely new design. I really like the idea of taking the familiar and making it suddenly a threat again. Like whenever I'm watching like a movie or something, I love the idea of like something that seems like I've seen it a million times, but being explored in a new way that makes it actually feel like, oh my God, how would I actually deal with that in real life? Like to me, that's really fun. There's the Koopa, I think, out of the ones that are like just enlarged versions of typical ghosts. That's a pretty good one because you have to like hit it with a bunch of eggs and then stomp on its belly once it's flipped
Yeah,
over.
I remember that one. That was actually pretty fun. I think it also makes sense, just the whole thing. I didn't mind either. Actually, these bosses, I thought they were all really cool and creative in their mechanics. But it made sense with the story too because it's Kamek actually using spells to just alter these otherwise normal character or NPCs. And I agree with you. The mechanics and the way they're designed, the boss fights are designed, is actually super satisfying, and it does make you kind of think. Maybe not critically is the best word, but you do have to do a little bit of. You have to have a little bit of strategy going into these. It's not just like jump on their head 3 times. It may make you think of a different way of approaching the boss. Mm-hmm. So I thought that was cool.
Russell, would you say that blob, the blob guy, is your favorite boss?
I'm trying to go back through my head and remember the ones outside the first few bosses. Because again, I'm kind of going off my older memories of this game rather than trying to relive it again and replay it. I'm probably going to go back and replay it at some point because it is a really nicely done game. But I do remember a great amount of satisfaction fighting that boss. Like it was one I actually wanted to go back to and play again. It was just this element of a very fun mechanic that suddenly made the game or made that fight not only easy but satisfying. It's like, yeah, nailed it. Some of the bosses were not as much fun. Like I somehow remember like the piranha plant not being especially enjoyable to fight. It's like, oh, cool. It's a big old piranha plant in the water. Nice. But I will say, again, with the whole idea that all these boss battles were not like Mario Mario bosses. Again, jump on their head 3 times was kind of the Mario way. And really depended on your reflexes, like very exacting reflexes to not get hit by something. These ones are all different, and they all had different mechanics, and they're all very smartly done and interesting. I think that's a huge step forward for the Mario world. Now, even going back to more recent Mario games, it's back to the formula of 3 hits and they're done. Like even I'm trying to think of like the last Mario game I played, and like Galaxy. It's like, yeah, it's still 3 hits and they're done. That's it. And these were all very different. like the potted ghost. I think you had to like push the potted ghost off a ledge or something like that.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah.
The potted ghost is actually my favorite for that reason, and it's because there's so many creative bosses. Yeah, and it was actually really hard for me to choose when I was thinking back through them, but there's so much character to the potted ghost. How he's teaming up with a bunch of shy guys who are trying to like push back against you. And then
You want to know that boss's name?
It's Roger the potted ghost.
Yeah, I just love those names. Roger, like just this generic ass name. Like, hey, how do you want to name that guy? Roger, Steve.
I love that. I love that too because it makes it feel like a real like he's probably got this is his day job. And then when he's not fighting Yoshi's at Kamek's behest, he's got like a wife named like Susie or something.
Yeah, the guy's got a wife and kids at home.
Yeah, he's just trying to feed them, and you're wrecking his like that is his home. Like,
Yoshi killed him in his own home.
You're a literal home wrecker.
Yeah, it's hideous. The names are so good. I'm just reading through this list. It's like
honorable
the
mention.
red nose.
I can't remember the name of this one. Joel, maybe you'll be able to help me out. I can't load my computer can't handle Zoom and loading the list.
Okay.
So I was trying to look at it on my phone, but I can't find it. What's the one with the slime?
Oh,
not the one with the blobs that come off of it, but the one that has a heart in the center of it that you have to throw a bunch of eggs at.
Unshaven.
Yeah.
Okay, so that one was really cool because it was like you could hit it with 3 eggs, but it's only the one that hits the heart that's going to count. So you had to actually like hit the same spot multiple times if you really wanted to hit that spot. So I really like how each boss kind of like tests different things in different ways about the same core mechanics, which I think is really ideal for this kind of a platformer / egg shooter type of game.
Is this considered an FPS game? A third-person shooter?
I mean, technically,
it's a third-person shooter.
I mean, it's kind of like an over-the-shoulder because you're throwing the eggs over your shoulder.
I rank my third-person shooters as Battlefront, Super Mario World 2.
This is the first one I ever played.
Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, did you guys want to move on to a new question, or do you guys have more comments that you want to make on this one, on the bosses?
Did you settle on a favorite, Russell?
I think I'm going to go with the slime, just because it was a very satisfying. Like I like satisfying fights, and it was one that I enjoyed, and the art was interesting because it was different.
Yeah, I really like that one. Also, there's like this whole headcanon of like taking parts of the boss and shooting it against him to make other chunks fall off, and it's like when you think about it with any amount of depth, you're like, oh, that's kind of creepy almost. But even that's when I was a kid, I think that's one of the things that made it so unique and interesting to me. I'm just gonna.
If you're talking creepy, I mean, like Yoshi eats live critters and turns them into eggs. There are many questions about this.
And then he throws his eggs. He uses them as weapons.
So many questions.
I think Yoshi is pro-choice.
I think there's got to be creepypastas written on this. There has to be.
Yoshi, the soul devourer.
Let's scour the internet. We'll find some.
If he got hungry enough, do you think he would just eat another one of his eggs again?
I mean, why not? Yeah.
I mean, it's like...
is that nourishing?
But what are the eggs made from? Are they just like candy-coated poops, or are they like actual eggs?
This is a whole can of worms that I'm sure we could go deep down the rabbit hole on.
Let's do it.
Hey, why not? I'm game.
Let's go down the pipe with these.
Yeah,
ones.
I mean, that's a good question, though. Are Yoshi's eggs, are they his victims that have been digested and turned into eggs? Are they children that he has bore from the nutrients of the enemies he's eaten? Or are they just random? Are they just normal eggs?
I mean, I can go from the herpetology aspect of this one if you want. Just a guess on this one, how it might work.
All right. What's your guess?
So there are many species of reptiles, some of which are hermaphroditic, some are not, but some females can be what I believe the term is egg bound. which means they have eggs developed in their system and growing in their system that have not been fertilized. So they tend to just kind of like, grow until there's something bursts or they get extracted. So I'm like, so are these Yoshis all hermaphroditic and or female? And as they eat something and digest it, like pushes an egg out their cloaca, like an unborn egg out of their cloaca that just happens to have an effective shell and just is like a solid mass of like embryonic goo inside there that is like hard enough and heavy enough to throw, and the shell is like both like semi leathery and semi like hard, so it actually makes for an effective projectile. And I have no idea, but in general, I don't think biology works like that for any creature.
These are the questions I never knew I needed answered.
The eggs also have like a tier system where like there's most eggs, like they come out green, and then when they bounce once they turn yellow, and they bounce again they turn red, which is why they do more damage apparently. And then sometimes you can just find eggs like out in the wild that are already yellow or red.
And they never had those stars. It's like, are those stars actually juvenile? Are those Yoshi tadpoles that you're collecting and adding more time to the timer? Is that Yoshi just sacrificing unborn or unmetamorphosized Yoshi babies into time for baby Mario? Is that what those stars are? Are all Yoshis actually stars?
I thought I took it more of like as like little wishing stars. Like I just wish I had another second, and if you find a wishing star, you get that other second.
I like that idea. I like that one.
That's how I feel. Terrifying.
I had one more honorable mention for the bosses. We kind of touched upon King Boo or Giant Boo, but one thing that I really liked about it was that every time you hit him, he got both easier in some ways to fight and harder in others, because he gets bigger each time you hit him, and that makes him a little bit harder to avoid when he's trying to damage you, but it makes him easier to hit with a ricochet. Like you don't have to try quite as hard to aim.
That's a good point. I didn't even think about that. Yeah, mechanically, you're right. It's kind of a double-edged sword. That's a good boss. Again, yeah, every boss had such a creative way of approaching it, I guess. I loved it. And I agree. I hope they do it in future games too. Make things a little bit more interesting. Spice things up a little bit.
You had a question lined up about the difficulty. Did you want to ask that one? I think this might be a good time for that.
Oh, yeah. Let me take a look at my question. Oh, yeah. Okay. So the question that I had was, if this wasn't your experience, let me know. But for me, it was. And I'm curious to get your guys' take on this. So I said the difficulty of the levels seemed to be somewhat gradual. So did you enjoy the slight increase in difficulty as you progressed, or would you have preferred something a bit more random and chaotic as far as the challenge goes with a platformer? I personally actually really liked it because it gave me this game, again, being so different from other Mario games I'd played, it was actually really nice to have that gradual increase in difficulty. The first few worlds were very straightforward. There wasn't a lot of really intense platforming. It kind of gave you a way to get acclimated to the mechanics and how the game rules function. And then by worlds 5 and 6, there was some pretty wild platforming and kind of crazier stuff going on, and I definitely died way more in those future or those later worlds. What about you guys? Did you have a similar experience? Was it different? Did you like it? Did you not like it?
So I think that the level progression and the difficulty curve was very well paced. Like it was very intentional as to how it was paced. And I will say there were nice little breaks in a lot of these levels that allowed you to kind of just enjoy the mechanics without it being especially hard. But there were a few moments in these games where I'm just trying to remember a few like key times where it's just like all of a sudden the difficulty just kind of spiked in a few particular spots that were really hard.
Yeah.
But that is kind of a a platformer element. Like without that level of challenge, you got to get through some hard parts. If it's smooth sailing all the way through, then it's not as fun. But I think the difficulty curve was effectively gradual, and there seemed to be more thought put into it than something like, I can't say that Mario 3 or Mario 1 even didn't have that. In fact, they all had very good like scaling for difficulty. But Yoshi's Island had, I think, more thought put into it than the other games. It really wasn't just a curve. It was a paced curve with a few little pits, a few little valleys, a few little hills, a few little, flat spots between that curve. And it was paced just right, I think.
I think that, yeah, those valleys are pretty important for a game like this, where like if you think about like a story, like any kind of a story, like 3-act, 4-act, whatever, usually it's not all go 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 go. If you've ever seen a movie like that, they could get really exhausting, and like maybe you think that they were really neat, but you probably wouldn't want to watch them twice. I don't think, at least I wouldn't. Like, you need those, if it's a horror movie, you need those moments where things feel relatively safe. If it's an action movie, you need those moments where people are like taking a moment to reflect on that badass fight they just had. With a platformer, like it's very hard to do that when in a story that doesn't have much of a plot. The way you would get that across is by having moments where things have been really difficult, but then maybe you bring it back to the difficulty level of an earlier stage. So that way, not only do you have a little bit of breathing room, but it gives you a chance to see how much you have grown as a player. Because in a game like this, you don't really see yourself grow by leveling up with stats or numbers. You see yourself level up in your platforming ability and egg throwing prowess. And so, go ahead.
I got to throw something out here. Just this is kind of taking it a little farther in one direction, but have you already played Yoshi's Story?
Yeah.
So Yoshi's Story significantly lacked a difficulty curve to that game. There were some levels that were harder than others, and then you jump into another level that was just painfully easy. And I wonder if that's the direction they attempted to take with Yoshi's Story, is to kind of, make the game a much more even, smooth curves. You can enjoy the art, enjoy the gameplay. Or if that just, they just didn't focus on that, and it showed a lack of effective level design, where they wanted to showcase, everything and just at the, without increasing difficulty. Yoshi's Island had more difficulty. Some of those levels got really challenging. Yoshi's Island, or Yoshi's Story, kind of didn't. I think it actually lent itself to being a very friendly and enjoyable game, but it was kind of one of the first games I found that was just like, this is a little too easy. Same like some of the Kirby games, like more recent Kirby games are like that. They're very just like, super easy, super like accessible. It's not like they're bad. They just lack deliberate, like very like distinctive challenge. Yoshi's Island kind of, I'm wondering, was almost the precursor to that, where they found that some people really enjoyed that nice smooth sailing rather than looking for that steeper challenge.
I think it's totally possible. I haven't played Yoshi's Story. I only started it a long time ago, so it's a game I'll definitely need to go back and give it another shot and see what you're talking about. It's interesting because Nintendo, this is something that kind of clicked in my head. Nintendo kind of started out with their platformers being really difficult, right? Like Nintendo hard is the term people always threw around, and you kind of knew, like as a kid, there were certain games you're just not going to beat because they're so damn difficult, like Ninja Gaiden and games like that. And it felt like for a while, Nintendo kind of moved away from that, like over the years gradually. And so you see that with, Yoshi's or Super Mario World 2, where it's like there's some difficulty, but there's also much more approachable to a larger group of people, whether you're younger or older. And I like now that something that kind of seems like they're maybe realized that there is a fan base that wants some challenge, releasing Metroid Dread. It's the only Metroid game I've played, and it wasn't the crazy, like the hardest thing I've ever played. It was a good challenge, but it was refreshing to play a platform or a 3D, side scroller platformer that didn't treat you like you're an idiot. And like it gave you a little bit to chew on, and you could actually kind of go, how do I solve this? Like there's some puzzles in Dread where I was like, man, I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah, I got stuck in that game a couple of times. I was like,
yeah,
it took me with some real brain power.
and my brother's he's a big Metroid fan, so he's played all. He loves Super Metroid, and he told me like this is like Metroid Dread is far easier than Super Metroid, because Super Metroid doesn't hold your hand at all. It's just here's a world, go figure it out. And he's like, yeah, Dread kind of points you much more directly, and nudges you in the right direction. So all that being said, my whole point was I feel like maybe Nintendo throughout the years has just been trying to figure out that balance for their fan base between, yeah, there's people who just want to play a really pretty fun side scroller and just get through it. And then there is a fan base that really likes that challenge and really enjoys side scrollers, and platformers and wants to be challenged. They want, like, you know, and this is a perfect example of it is Super Mario Maker, right? Isn't that what it is? The like build your own Mario levels.
Yeah,
man, there's some stuff in there that's insane. Like the stuff fans come up with and the challenges that they create for themselves and other people. There's clearly a good number of people that want that, and Nintendo, it's cool. They recognized it when they made that game. So it's pretty interesting.
I do think that they found a pretty good balance with Yoshi's Island. I think it might have, like when I was a kid, I might have had some difficulty if I was trying to complete it. But also I think if I was a kid, I would be less interested in getting everything as it would be in just getting to the end. And just getting to the end of the game with enough trial and error, I think is perfectly feasible. Since I've become an adult, any playthrough I've done of the game has been 100% completion. I've done it for the SNES version, and I've done it for the GBA version, which had a couple of extra, like 6 extra levels, 1 per world. But I think that Nintendo kind of banks on the idea that eventually you're going to go back from the beginning and go through it with the intent of finding all the red coins and getting all the flowers and ending with 30 seconds of star time. And if you do that after having played through the first couple of worlds and you go back then you can kind of get an idea like, oh, wow, I had a little bit of difficulty maneuvering even this simple first couple of levels. But now that I've been through a few worlds, like this is nothing. Like I get it. Like I'm a better player now. And now I can focus more easily on finding all of the collectibles, which I really enjoy doing. I'm a collector. I really like 100%ing like side scrolling games, especially because there's a little bit less to worry about. You can find everything a little bit more easily. This one I think lends itself pretty well, which we can talk about in a bit. But I do think that there's certainly things in this game that make it like you can kind of choose your own difficulty by how much of the game you want to play.
I am very different when it comes to side scrollers. It's certain games like Dark Souls, I 100% completed that. And that was a lot of hours. But when it comes to side scrollers, I don't know what it is. I just don't care about the coin, like the red coins, the flower like trophy things or whatever. Or what are they again? You have to collect
the flowers. I just call them flowers.
Yeah, the flowers. I would, if I saw one, I would do my best to get it, but I also wouldn't. I wouldn't go back if I realized I missed one early on. So I think that it's cool. I like that they include it because it gives you more to do while you're going through the levels. But for me, I could care less, and I probably will go back and play it. But even when I replay it, I probably won't try to 100% it. I wish. So, is there an incentive? Do they like? Is there a cutscene or something that plays? Like, I like it when games do that. I think Metroid games do that. If you get all of the items, they give you an extra cutscene or an art piece or something that they show you. So
I think it was an art piece in this one. So when you do like the puzzle, the little mini games at the end of the level, and you get the flower. So when you have that little spinny wheelie thing and it gets the flower, you get a mini game, which you get life bonuses and star bonuses, etc. And I think that was Yoshi's Island. You get that little sound like carnival music, and then you get the bonuses. And the only way to 100% the game, as far as I remember, was to do enough of there were ones that made like a little picture if you won things. So you had to do that enough times over the course of the game after you 100%ed it to get the full picture. And that's as close you get to 100% of the game, is to get that full image.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah,
I think
it's
that. I think
aside
that.
from that, it's mostly the well, in the GBA version, there are those 6 extra levels that you get after you've completed all the rest of the game. But in the
Oh, that's
SNES
cool.
version, it's mostly just the title screen is a little bit different. There's like stars over every level that you've 100%ed, so you can just kind of like go through it, and it's mostly bragging rights. So
Hell
it's
yeah.
like I think Mario games they've always been a little bit lackluster with their completion bonuses. Super Mario World had a really cool completion bonus, but it's something that I really wish I could have unlocked partway through the game and enjoyed the rest of the game.
What is it
Which
in
is
that one?
so it turns everything on Dinosaur Island into like an autumn theme. So all the leaves are like kind of that
Oh,
orange, like fall colors,
wait, that is really cool.
right? But it's like you've already completed the game, which means you've probably played the game more than you ever want to play it again. Like,
Yeah,
so it's like you're not really going to get to enjoy it.
I have a hard time going back to certain games unless it's been like a year or two. You know, like sometimes even more. Like I don't know if I'll pick up Super Mario World for another few years. Yeah, there's very few games that I'm like I'm gonna play it again. Like Ocarina of Time is a game that I like to go back periodically and play more regularly. Dark Souls is. Um, that is cool though, that they at least thought about it. I didn't realize that with Yoshi's Island. I just thought there was really no point. At least there's something that you get for it. I think I'm just not the. I think I'm just. That's just the way I am. I just don't care for side scroller completion.
That's fair. Every like each their own, and I think that Nintendo did a pretty good job of like not making that. And I guess that is kind of a benefit of not having there be like such a crazy cool completion bonus. Is that like, yeah, most of the target audience probably doesn't want to care about 100%ing the game, and so it'd be kind of a bummer also to lock something super amazing or like one of the key selling points of the game behind 100% completion, because few people are going to want to do that.
I do like that certain games have done that where you do get something really cool for 100%ing it. Like Dead Space is one that comes to mind. Have you heard about Dead Space's? Like, I forget what you have to do. You have to beat it on like the hardest difficulty or something. And you get or Dead Space 2, maybe. You
Is
get
it
one
the
of those,
gun,
like,
the
yeah, the
finger gun?
finger guns. And it just like one shots everything.
And
So
doesn't he go
it's
like bang, bang, bang?
yeah. He says bang, 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 bang. And so that to me is hilarious and cool. And it doesn't change anything if you don't complete the game, because you're like, well, that's not, I don't play to, use a finger gun where he says bang. It's more just kind of a weird novelty, like fun thing. But it does give people an incentive to go like, yeah, also bragging rights. Like you can tell your friends, hey, yeah, I got the finger gun thing, but bang, bang. Um, so again, though, I don't know if it's just more of a. I think it's about how invested in how much you love the game, right? Like that. Those are the people who are going to finish it 100%. And I do think though that YouTube and the internet itself has really deterred people from completing games, because now you can just look up whatever the final thing is online and have a video in really nice like 4K quality showing you someone doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when I was younger and you couldn't, look up videos of someone getting like the super secret thing in a video game, it did make me want to do it myself way more. And it's hard to say if that would have been different now as an adult, but I think it did change things, the landscape of how games are made and what incentives are included at the end, because they know people can just access those things. Like it's the whole reason is creator of Smash Bros. Sakurai. With Smash 4, there was all these like beautiful cutscenes and everything, and then people leaked them online like immediately after beating the game. And he was pissed because he wanted people to experience it for themselves, and he knew that people probably wouldn't play it as much if they could just watch all the cutscenes. And so it was one of the main reasons he didn't include cutscenes in the newer Smash, with the story mode in Smash Ultimate. So it's weird to think that, yeah, you can just view anything, any hidden secret immediately. It's at your fingertips, as opposed to like the lore and the kind of mystery when you were younger. And like, oh yeah, did you know you can do this in Pokemon? Or that there's this cave and all the way in the, like this one area with the Lugia in it or whatever. You know, it changed things.
Yeah, now we have like data miners and so we exist in a different age than what we grew up in, which I mean, I think kids today won't have a frame of reference. This is their normal. So I don't know if we're just old curmudgeons, but I don't think so. I think that there's something definitely missing in that regard.
I think I'm definitely old. I'm definitely an old curmudgeon.
Same.
Yeah, I don't think it's necessarily like a super negative thing, but I think it's just something that has changed gaming, and how games are, the process, the development of them, what's considered important and what's not, and also just the actual social aspect of gaming. That's one of the things I used to love having conversations with friends about who were into games, is like, oh my gosh, did you figure that out and do that? Oh yeah, I have Nintendo Power, or issue whatever, it's in there, and that's how I figured it out. And then you it's like you're sharing secrets, and you're sharing a passion for something. I just thought I missed that, and that's why stuff like this is so cool, to talk about that stuff with people who are also into gaming. So
yeah, that's why I love doing this. Russell, did you have any questions in mind that you wanted to pitch to us?
I don't think so. I'm just kind of along for the ride on this one. Again, I'm kind of just working from my memories of the game as kind of my reference point. So nothing in particular.
Something that we just briefly touched on, and I think it's a great time to bring it up, though, is, so we talked about level design and mechanics and bosses. What about the sections where you transform as Yoshi into some sort of vehicle? I think you can turn into like a mole vehicle thing. I think a tank or something, a helicopter. Necessary, unnecessary? Did you like it? Did you hate it?
To say that those sections broke the immersion of the game is almost a textbook definition of loss of immersion. They weren't bad. They were super interesting, but they were like, what in the hell is going on here? This makes no sense.
I agree.
They were
I disagree a little bit. Go ahead, though.
It's like they were neat. They certainly added a whole other element to the game, and it kind of like brought to mind, it's like, well, all right, why can't we do this more? Or why can't this be a core element of the game instead of a once in a while thing? Or why couldn't it have been just something like, Yoshi gets wings, Yoshi gets big, Yoshi gets like, something else that makes Yoshi dig, instead of turning them into construction equipment, which is just very strange. Mechanically really interesting, like good. I think it also is kind of coming at a time where something like this was a concept that was being tested in a game like this. Like, hey, we haven't done this before in a Mario game. This is something fresh and new and interesting. Maybe people will like it. And, it was interesting. It could have been a lot worse, but I think personally it was just like, this is odd. It doesn't make a lot of sense, and it's a little just bizarre. But yeah, I think that's kind of where I'm going to leave it. It was just plain weird. Just plain weird.
I'm going to let John give his take, because I think my view is going to fall in line with yours, Russell. I thought the same thing.
See, I mean, I agree. It was definitely bizarre, and it felt a little bit out of nowhere. But I feel like the game itself is just so full of those things that none of it feels any more out of place than any other. And if anything, I think it did a really good job to me of building the world a little bit, of just how silly and magical the adventure was, because there's that element of magic, obviously, with Kamek and transformation. But it raised a lot of questions for me, which were fun to kind of think about, similar to like the whole egg discussion we were just having a little while ago. To me, it's like, so where are all these transformations coming from? Like, is there some kind of a Yoshi scientist on the island who's inventing these cool ways for Yoshis to get around and do things, and just leaving them in spots? Like, is Yoshi's Island like community based? Like, is there like reasons for these things to be here? Because they definitely serve a purpose. Like, you never find a mole digger or helicopter in a place where you don't need the mole or the helicopter thing. So like, is this sort of like finding a crosswalk light in our city, or like is this a utility, like a public utility? To me, that was just kind of, it was fun, especially as a kid. I'm like, oh, I love it, and I wanted to see more. And then in my doing a little bit of research for this episode, I found out that there were actually several more ideas planned for, like, there were several unused transformations in there. I think one of them is like a jackhammer. I'm just like, I'm like, what would that have been for? Like, I want to know. Like, so like, I'm not saying I want more of any one of the present transformations, but I would have liked to see a couple of the ones that weren't used. Like, I think that they were really great pace breakers. Because the adventure was already so weird, I didn't think it really broke my immersion. I just thought, I was just like, yeah, all right. Like, you know, she's a helicopter.
It kind of reminds me of the hats and the hat use in Mario Odyssey. It's like, now Mario is a rock dude. Oh, hey, now Mario's a T-Rex. It's like, wait, what? It kind of works. It's just like, all right, this is a fresh, new, interesting mechanic to do something different in game. But at least in Odyssey, it was a very core part of the gameplay, whereas in Yoshi's Island, it was not core at all. It was just an add-on to kind of like enhance certain spaces. Not terrible, but just off-putting.
I agree with you. I think it's not like the worst thing ever. It was fine. I didn't hate it. It was just more, I kind of felt the same way. I was like, why can't Yoshi just have wings here? Like, why does he need to turn into a helicopter? Like, this doesn't even make any sense. The thing that came to mind, I don't think this is why they did it, but I had seen a couple of documentaries about like toys in the 90s, and I wonder if I was like, what if they did that because they were going to try to make like a Yoshi copter and a Yoshi tank thing and a Yoshi like mole as a toy and then sell it, and just to give them more variety. I don't think that's what they were thinking, but it did cross my mind.
There were trading cards.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they were included in like Nintendo Power issues.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Huh. That's pretty cool. They've had a track record of doing kind of weird transformations in their games. The other one I can think of that came after this was Banjo-Kazooie, where Banjo and Kazooie, they're both transform into weird stuff. Like, the one that always made me laugh was when he transforms into a washing machine, and when you attack, you shoot out like socks and underwear and stuff.
Mm-hmm. And that's again, also rareware too, so it's not.
Yeah. No, I know rare. But at the time, it was, it came out on N64, and that was it. Like, it was still Nintendo, and I think Microsoft didn't buy them until later, much later. So again, and then with Mario Odyssey, I haven't played it, but I've seen my old roommate play it. And yeah, it was very reminiscent to me of Banjo-Kazooie, where it was like, oh, he's turning into this thing, and I had a reason. You got a reason to use that transformation in the world.
Going back to one of the initial questions you asked for this topic, Joel, was like, was it necessary? No, I don't feel as though if the game had been built without these segments, I would have been like, there's something missing. But I also don't feel like, having played it, now that I have played the game, and now that I know those segments are there, if I played through an entire Yoshi's Island adventure and I didn't have those, I would feel like they were missing. Because I think it's just, to me, become kind of an iconic part, for better or worse, of the experience. And I won't lie, some of those segments are kind of stressful, especially if you're trying to complete the game. There's some areas where you would really need to go back to get the helicopter bubble 4 or 5 times to get every coin in that segment, which is kind of annoying. Like, I kind of wish there wasn't as much of a time limit, but I get it. Like, for the time, like, everything like that needed to have a time limit.
I thought the same thing. I know the exact section you're talking about with the helicopter, because I had to do it two or three times. Because the first time I didn't make it all the way. I was trying to get all these coins, and then the time ran out and it shot me all the way back. And then the next time I hit one of the, I forget, there's like a barrier in the air or something, and I hit that, and then it set me back, and then I didn't make it again, and then finally I made it the third time. By the third time I was pretty pissed. I was like, this is the stupidest mechanic I've ever seen. But again, yeah, it is still iconic in that game. That is something I remembered before I had even started playing it again. a few months ago. Were those transformations? So for better or for worse, they're in the game. Did you have another? You want to go with another one of your questions, John, and then I can ask another one too after.
Sure. First, Russell, do you have any more to add about the vehicle sections?
I think I pretty much said my piece on that one. It was not the highlight of the game.
Okay. Let's see. Is this a story that you think could be told effectively in another medium? If so, what would that look like, and how much would it have to change?
Oh, the first thing that comes to mind is you adapt it into a fairy tale book, right? Like kids book. And I think you'd need a real, you just need a solid writer to translate the areas and what's happening in those areas into a few pages per area or per world or something, like, oh, and Mario and Yoshi made it to the ice world and they fought raging blizzards and blah 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 blah. And I think it'd be really cool. Like I could see reading that to kids, and I'd assume they'd probably be like, oh yeah, it's pretty tight.
Maybe like a pop-up.
Yeah, a pop-up book would be incredible. I think it'd be
literally
super fun.
What it was.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, yeah. I think Yoshi's Story was like a literal pop-up book. Like you would go to a new world, you would flip the page, and it would be like a whole new pop-up. But I think that if you could do that same thing, but with the overall art style of Yoshi's Island, that would just be like
fantastic. Awesome.
I had this weird vision of this game and a way that it could be redone to make a very interesting experience. A VR like Yoshi's Walkabout. Like you're pretty much walking through the storybook of Yoshi's Island in VR or even AR. That could be something that would be very interesting. Or almost like imagine like was the Mario like theme park, and Yoshi's Island is an AR experience or VR experience. That could be really interesting. Because mostly with that art style, you're looking at pretty much like 2D shapes being just stuck all over the place. It's all these they almost look like stickers on everything. And you're passing by these flat cardboard looking shapes with a bunch of color and stylized, drawings to them. And you're in this very like fluffy, artsy, cloudy world. It could be really interesting to just kind of be in the body of Yoshi or be honestly in the body of Mario and just kind of like walking through on Yoshi and just kind of experiencing the universe. That could, of all the games I could think of all the Mario games I could think of at all, would be highly interesting.
I could see that having some potential. Like you'd have to probably downplay the platforming element in favor of like maybe doing more of a first-person shooter with the eggs.
Yeah, I think it would also be less of a game, more of an experiential thing, or possibly like even a musical thing. Again, because the music kind of goes along with this, and it's very much like you're hearing the music, you're watching the world go by, and just think of like a VR, It's a Small World, except it's very Nintendo. And I think if any game Nintendo has ever done, outside of some actual rhythm games, like I will say their mainstay, that would actually be really neat to see. Like turning this art style into an actual exhibit of sorts. Kind of showcasing that music again, because
I see what you mean.
It was great.
Yeah, that would be really cool.
Yeah, it does bring you to a place, or even like a physical exhibit. Like, welcome to Yoshi's Island. A bunch of greens growing everywhere, and a bunch of like painted colors. And you're walking through Yoshi's Island. You can buy little like Yoshi beverages that are like egg shaped. I don't know.
They should have that at Super Nintendo Land.
That's what it is, Super Nintendo Land. But that's exactly it, because the art and the world itself lend themselves well to reproduction in a way. It's a lot more iconic looking than Yoshi's Story or Yoshi's Woolly whatever, which is cool, it's yarn. Kirby didn't do that either. I guess it's macrame. But yeah, the Yoshi's Island style is very bright, very vibrant, very like fuzzy is a good word, and just really pleasant on the eyes, and it doesn't look like anything and still looks fairly iconic. It's great.
Coming from someone who actually did like Yoshi's Woolly Worlds aesthetic, I do still prefer Yoshi's Island. I think that, to me, that is the iconic Yoshi aesthetic.
It's also a pixel game, whereas Wooly and Story were not pixels. They were 3D animated, and they just don't have that same type of character that people our age are, we gravitate to. We love the old pixel games. We remember them fondly. There are many excellent older early 3D games I'm sure remember just as fondly, but I think of older classic games, I think of pixels. And Yoshi's Island is probably one of the best examples of that time period of a pixel-based 2D platformer. It really is, art style and execution-wise, one of the best.
I definitely agree. Do you have any thoughts on the question? Any more thoughts, Joel?
No, I think you nailed it. And I also think the VR experience is a really cool idea. Having just purchased a VR headset like a month ago, man, the stuff that people create in VR chat is incredible. And, talking like people pulling full worlds or at least full levels from games. Like I found Firelink Shrine from Dark Souls. Someone just created it. Someone took the Game Boy version of Animal Crossing and created it. It's nuts. And so having the ability to walk through something from Yoshi's Island and hearing the sound and spatially, like, oh my gosh, like the music's coming from over there and there's like the noises from the enemies over here. And it would be really cool. So that's the last thing I had to say about that. I think it's a cool idea.
Only VR that wasn't so nausea inducing.
Yeah, I know.
Oh,
on last week's episode for Pikmin, we were talking about how cool it would be to do like a VR first-person Pikmin game. I wonder if anybody's tried to do that in the VR chat.
I don't know. Pretty much I've realized like if there's a fan base for something, somebody has created some type of world or avatar from that franchise, right? Like it's crazy. There's a bunch of, right now, obviously, Among Us and Fortnite are very popular. So there's a lot of those worlds, but you can type like Cowboy Bebop and there's a world and there's, you can find Spike's avatar and it's like, there's Jet. It's pretty cool. I'm just waiting for the day when all of these companies realize, and I'm sure they already realize that their copyrighted material is being utilized in all sorts of ways in VR by people who don't own it. I'm sure that's going to become a thing in the future of VR, but for right now, I think it's so new that they don't really want to touch it because they don't know legally what to do about it.
There's also the fact that Nintendo just doesn't know how to do VR. If they know how, they're not showing it. Their version of VR with the Labo is kind of laughable.
But Nintendo is so strict with their IPs. Like if there's a fan made game for anything, they're getting their asses sued off. Like it's nuts. So it's crazy to me that there's all of this Nintendo stuff. Like I have a Link avatar that I can turn into. Like that, Nintendo didn't make that. Somebody took it and made it, and they made Zora's Domain from Ocarina of Time.
Oh, I want to see that.
Who Nintendo didn't greenlight that, so it's weird to me. I think they know, and they're just trying to figure out how they can pull this content because I doubt they are okay with people just doing whatever they want with their assets.
I mean, the whole concept isn't new at all. I mean, back in the old days of Newgrounds, Nintendo assets were super common. They were just clipped and turned into Flash animations all the time. Pixel Flash was so common, and then Pixel games using the same assets, and all these like homebrew games using Nintendo assets were very common. Now it's just different. It's I'm sure part of their strategy, I'm sure, is not to just smack everything down. It's only to smack things down that are genuinely trying to make money.
I think, and I think that's the one loophole for VR chat is that it's free. So, and I'm sure if someone was charging people for avatars and worlds, then they would probably get sued. But I guess because it's all just user generated and free, maybe they don't care.
Falls under homage, parody, and things like that. It's not necessarily capitalizing on the characters as monetary objects. It's just fandom. It's fan made content.
It's crazy.
I'm
though.
imagining.
Yeah.
I'm imagining like somehow, some way, somebody from Nintendo listens to this episode of this podcast and is like, "Wait, people are doing what?" And it's like our fault that all of that shit gets taken
Doug
down.
Bowser, the new CEO, is listening to your podcast, and he hears this, and he goes, "All right, I'm going to go sue the living shit out of VR chat." Sorry, guys, my bad.
Makes a post saying you can thank the book club but gaming podcast.
Yeah. Shh, Doug, shut up.
Don't.
Yeah, but it's incredible. I love it. I love that there's that kind of fan base behind their content. I think Nintendo's fans and the creative people who are fans of Nintendo make some of the coolest art and homages to their content. I found someone made like the full Breath of the Wild tutorial section in VR. Like how you can, and there's like the sword you can interact with. There's like the old king at the beginning by the fire. You can actually activate the first tower and you watch it, and then you can go climb up it. It's crazy. It's so cool. So anyway, we went into down a rabbit hole there, but that was the last thing I wanted to say.
There actually is, or are, a couple of different versions of a Yoshi's Island manga.
Oh, no
I've
kidding.
never read it, but I saw a little bit of art for it when I was doing research earlier today, and I was like, "Oh, that looks interesting." But it's in black and white, and to me, because it's a manga, right? But to me, it feels like a disservice because, like Russell was saying, so much of the appeal is that art style and are those vibrant colors and the way that they play off of things. So, like to do a Yoshi's Island story in anything but color feels like a disservice to me.
I might have to check it out. I didn't even know that was a thing.
I haven't read it though, so maybe it is really good. But just surface level, I was looking at it. I'm like, I don't know how. Like, it just, and I get it though. It costs more money to do things in color, I guess. But
yeah.
Do you want to move on to your next question?
Sure. I had another one, but I think I'm going to skip that one and just go to my last question, which was, would you play a Super Mario World 3 if Nintendo surprise announced it? Obviously, we're well past that era of Nintendo making Mario games, but if they decided to reboot that title, Super Mario World, and then add a 3 to it, and it's third game in the series, what do you think? I guess that's the question. What do you think it would look like? Would you want to play it?
I think you would probably play as one of the little wishing star guys.
Okay.
Because following the trend of playing as a character introduced in the previous game and just completely changing everything about the game's gameplay, you play as a wishing star guy. And I don't know.
You'd be Geno from Super Mario RPG. Like,
yes!
the whole Geno game. Like,
I mean, we've been wanting him to come back, right? Everybody's been wanting Geno back. Like, give Geno his own game and call it Super Mario World 3 and just have no Mario in it at all.
Like urban, it's like a stealth action Mario. God. I mean, if that game came back and they label it as Super Mario World 3, I feel like it would be a signifier that they are taking a whole new step in the Mario genre, and this is essentially restarting the canon line of Mario, which at this point is gone after Super Mario World. I mean, I guess after Super Mario World, essentially, technically Yoshi's Island, the canon of Mario is now gone. There is no more like direct canon. It's new Super Mario World, et cetera, but if they did Super Mario World 3, it is now time for a new direction in Mario entirely, to make a new format of the game, to create a new standard of Marios. And I actually question if they're either going to take it in a whole different direction or just create a really solid new 3D or 2D platformer with very, very different Mario mechanics.
I did just suddenly get a little bit of an inspiration of what that might look like. What if it was a combination where it's like Mario as an adult is reunited with the same tribe of Yoshis that helped him as a baby, and maybe it's just one of those Yoshis suddenly you're like paired up with, and so for most of the adventure you're Mario riding on this Yoshi, but maybe there's segments where you have to separate kind of like an Eastward, where it's like suddenly now I'm like I'm playing as Mario in this area, and then I can tap the left bumper button, and I'm back in Yoshi's shoes, and I'm navigating as Yoshi.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
And this time you're elderly Mario with a cane, and instead of like flying away in a bubble, he like falls down on his back, and Yoshi has to help him up.
It's the same Yoshi too. He hasn't aged at all.
He's like, Yoshi's live forever until they fall in lava.
What if
you drop them in lava?
That's true. What if you just are the third game is you're just Kamek and you fly over every level and you just blast the shit out of everyone with magic?
Dude,
that would be
you're
hype.
Kamek now.
That would be hype. Let's go. Come on.
I'm up for that. I'm so up for that.
It'd be like easy mode. You know, actually, have you seen that in some of the Mario games? I think it was New Super Mario World or Super Mario. Anyway, if you fail and die enough times, it gives you a gold, I think it's a gold mushroom or something, and it makes you invincible for the entire level.
Right.
So
just like it looks like you're having a little trouble.
Yeah,
Nintendo doesn't do hard anymore.
Yeah, it happened to me once, and I was like, "What? Hell no, I'm not taking that mushroom."
I'm insulted, but intrigued.
Yeah. But then I did take it, and it was pretty hype because you just bulldoze everything in the level.
I think in Super Mario 3D Land for the 3DS, because those appear after you've died 5 times.
Oh, okay.
If they appear, not if you take it, but if they appear at any point in your playthrough, you've soft locked yourself out of 100% completion, which is kind of bullshit.
So it's both harder and easier.
Right.
Like, this is your wall.
It's like, it's easier to beat the game. It's impossible to complete now.
Nintendo, I'm going to need you to go ahead, if you're listening, go ahead and release the patch and fix that. Thanks.
Fix that.
Yeah, my contacts at Nintendo, I'm sure they'll hear this.
Doug Bowser, if you're listening, I don't care what you do to the VR space, but just patch that one Super Mario 3D Land game that I didn't really play much of anyway.
Reggie Fils-Aimé, please. Hear our pleas.
In terms of like the canon, like you're Mario, you were kind of, if not raised by Yoshi's, if you believe this canon, you were at least helped and spent some formative time with them. Like these things saw you through an entire adventure and reunited you with your brother and saved you from Bowser and Kamek. And then in Super Mario World, which is I guess technically a chronological sequel, like your Yoshis are such an expendable resource that people are you use them to get higher jumps if you need to 100% a level at the goalpost or just to save your own ass. Like it's funny because it also depends on how you play, because you could also go and save some baby Yoshis. Like if you find the different colored Yoshis, you can save them and kind of raise them and make them stronger. But then they're just as easy to lose.
Yeah, it's true.
I mean, we are all aware that Mario is probably a sociopath, right?
Probably.
Oh yeah, the video. Have you seen that animated video, which is exactly about that? Which is Mario using Yoshi to jump off his, I think it's his face or something, and Yoshi just falls into a pit and dies screaming in agony, and Mario grabs the flag and just runs forward. It doesn't give a shit.
I haven't seen that.
If I can
send me the link to that.
Yeah, if I can find it, I'll send it to you. It's pretty good.
Also, if you look closely in Super Mario World, anytime you're making Yoshi stick his tongue out, it's Mario smacking the back of his head.
Wait, say that again.
So, like in Super Mario World, if you get a Yoshi and you're riding it, and you use B to make its tongue stick out, the animation has Mario smacking the back of his head before he does that.
Someone call PETA in. Oh man, that's pretty bad. Sorry, Yoshi.
Russell, you sent me a video before we recorded. I didn't get a chance to look at it. Was that the one that Joel was just talking about too, or was that a different one too?
So you should probably post that in the chat. And it's not super long. It pretty much is a animated speed run of Yoshi's Island, and it's fantastic. I love terminal montage. This stuff is great. Yeah, John, if you want to throw that in the chat, you guys might want to take a few seconds to watch that one, just to kind of, it surprisingly sums it up fairly well. It actually does sum up the whole game surprisingly well and surprisingly terribly.
Okay, so we all just went and watched that clip that Russell was talking about, and that was pretty funny. Russell, I'll go ahead and post a link to it in the description of this episode so that people watching this can know what we're talking about. But that was really funny, and it definitely captured a lot of the silliness and like stuff that you're not really supposed to think too hard about with the way this game's world works.
Just we'll say one of my favorite parts of that was that slow zoom into the purple Yoshi's eyes as the blue Yoshi does the transformation, just like sunglass smile and just like
just accept it, just embrace it.
So subtle and so good.
One thing that it reminded me of in the segment where it was talking about the giant frog.
Yeah.
After you beat that boss, when Yoshi gets spat back out and turned to normal size, he has this like he looks straight at the camera, or the camera, so to speak, the screen, with these really wide eyes that you don't see too often in the game. I don't think it might even be one of the only instances where you see that. It's just
interesting little quirk.
And that reminded me of one of the questions I had here, which is, what are some of the details in this game, big or small, that really detract or add to the experience of building the world?
Well, I will say the sound design is absolutely on point. Like 100%, completely on point. Everything across the board in this whole universe, the sounds all work. They are all, for the most part, consistent, and all have the same kind of fluffy quality to them. It's incredibly well done when maintaining a cohesive sense of world.
I agree. One that comes to mind is the little bubble popping sound effect of an egg ricocheting and how the pitch gets higher for every ricochet that it does.
It's a good detail. It's one I didn't even think about, but yeah, as soon as you said it, I can hear it.
Right, it's so iconic. Like if you were to hear just that as like a text alert, like the sound of the egg ricocheting 3 times or something like that, like I'm sure it would be instantly recognizable.
Yeah, definitely. And I think Yoshi's tongue sound is right up there too, for me at least.
And the funny thing is that's one of the only things in this game that did not follow through to everything else is Yoshi's tongue sound. Because it's the ba-dum from everything else except this game, where in this game it sounds like he's actually licking a thing.
Yep.
But the ground pound sound, again, it's different. I think, yeah, since Yoshi's whole thing from this point forward was making noises for everything, and he didn't really make the Yoshi sounds in this game. I mean, that's kind of been his whole personality in everything from Mario Party onward, is that Yoshi makes the Yoshi noises. But this one didn't have any of those noises. I think I'm pretty sure it didn't have anything like that.
It has kind of like a whinny, like a horse whinny, but it's more like squeaky, like Yoshi-esque.
I think that really is when he gets hit. He has this kind of squeak, but it really is just that's the side of him spinning.
When after you get hit and then you reclaim Mario and he remounts you, it has this kind of I'm not going to try and replicate it, but
come on, do it. Do it for Doug Bowser.
For Doug, okay, for you, Doug.
Hey, all right,
no, it doesn't.
That Yoshi, the whip boo sound.
The whip woo.
Yeah, the whip woo.
Whip woo.
Whip woo.
Whip woo.
Yeah, whip boo, whatever. That one. That's the only thing that is maintained from this game, and all the other sounds. Think of the ground pound sound from this game and the ground pound sound from anything else, any other game with Yoshi in it. He does the little budding pa Yoshi noise.
He's much more vocal.
Yeah, it's the most fan. And this one, it's can you imagine in your head? Can you remember what the ground pound sound is from this game?
It's not something he does. It's just sort of like an added sound effect.
Yeah,
I think.
Bubbly. Yeah. It's very bubbly sounding, and then when he gets hit, there's the spinny sound. When he throws the egg and it bounces, there's that boink sound. When he I think it's used for multiple things, but with the fuzzies, and you touch the fuzzy, and there's that almost like a trombone sound, that kind of thing, where that's used for multiple things. It's all these very bouncy, fluffy, flowy sounds. And that is, if you played this game in a way without visuals, you could imagine what this world is, even at a time where we're using sound that we are, this is, the 16-bit era, and these sounds are not as, well, I can't say that, but they are in line with that 16-bit era sound, but you can pretty much envision the world through these little sound bits. They're so accurate to the rest of the world, just incredibly so incredibly well dialed in to make it sound exactly like they intended it to. Like, they sound like Yoshi's Island, and these sounds are so distinctive to that setting. There's nothing else that sounds like it, and it is so perfectly fit.
Nice. That's a good point. How about you, Joel? Could you think of any of those details that really made or broke the world?
No, I mean, I think I'll go with like big pictures. Just we've already touched on this, but the colors, the wispiness of the world itself, it's all very in theme. You don't like, I've never went to a new world, even though there might be a totally different landscape. Like, you might go from like an ice world to a series of caves to like a jungle or whatever. It all felt like it was in the same place. Like it felt like the same game, I guess is what I'm trying to say, based on the art style. And that's actually something to me that's really impressive, to carry an art style throughout multiple different landscapes and themes and still make it feel cohesive is pretty cool. So yeah.
So there's one sound that did not match. One sound.
What's that?
Baby Mario crying.
Bullets.
Oh, the bullets.
They were too real. That's like, this sounds like something out of Contra. Like, this is not right. Like, for the fire and the ice, it was like this blue, like this little, like, this whooshing sound. The watermelon seeds were straight up bullets. I'm like, ooh, all right, that's a little jarring.
And there's Yoshi raining down terror with his 50 cal.
Exactly what it was. Like, wait, what? I mean, like, what else are you gonna do for that? But it was like, okay, hold on. You figured it would have been a bit more like, light sounding than like sounding like an actual, like, it's like they pulled it out of a war game. It's like, okay, Yoshi PTSD going on here.
I would love it if, like, every time you do that, like, it's like actual Call of Duty audio. Like, you can hear like screams and stuff happening. Like, it looks like it sounds like it's been pulled from an entirely different game. The aesthetic stays the same, but
honestly, if they swapped those sounds around, like those distinctive sounds, like just like all of Yoshi's animation sounds, I bet the game would feel incredibly different if that was the major change they made. So like, or if someone just went in there and did a mod where they just subtly adjust the sounds, I think it would change the tone of the game a lot, because in a way, the game is a little like, it's got a little like, it's got a little mushroom LSD trip thing going on. It really does, with how everything is very like round. Boop.
My bad. That was me. Hit the wrong button at the wrong time. But I did. Yeah. We didn't miss much. But
you're cut off, Russell.
No, man. Can't talk about LSD. But anyway, so
no, you could repeat that, because I do want that in there.
So since it kind of has this whole like LSD trip, kind of mushroomy vibe, and everything has all these very like rounded curves, if you change the sounds to be a bit more sinister sounding or a bit more real sounding, or almost like, Vietnam era flashback, if you really want to think of it in a very like direct kind of term. But again, if you made the sounds more real, funny enough, the world starts to become a bit more sinister. Again, look at like, everything's got a face. Like, the mountains have faces. Kind of like, again, that's something that was in Mario, but like, everything has a face. Everything's smiling with this very vapid smile. Everything that, even the enemies have these weird kind of like blank expressions. The game itself, if you put like a grainy dark filter on it and some like sinister music and change the sounds to from light and fluffy to a bit more harsh, the game suddenly develops a very odd vibe.
Yoshi's Haunted Island. Make it, Bowser.
Funny enough,
come on, Doug.
It would actually work.
Come on, Doug. You know what we want.
Doug,
bruh. Those are all really great points. I do want to get back to what Joel was saying about the cohesive art style, though. I think that it definitely helps the fact that it feels like somebody drew in crayons and pixels at the same time. And that means like no matter what kind of landscape you draw, it's always going to have that kind of crayon drawing touch. And it does fit in with the music. And I think that that both of these points are really great because it all like it shows just how important the whole picture of it is. Like Joel, you were saying the big picture, like they wouldn't have worked as well. One wouldn't have worked as well without the other. I think like you needed the right sound design with the right aesthetic, with the right game mechanics, for the most part. And it all came together so beautifully.
Well said. Yeah, I mean, both visual and audio are, when you pair them correctly in any form of media, that's to me when you get the most moving result. It makes you feel something, a certain, like, just the words we've used to describe this, it's clear they had a direction and a way they wanted to make you feel while playing it. And I think they succeeded. They did a good job.
I think you had one more question that you hadn't quite asked yet.
I had one about, was there a world that stuck out to you in particular? Maybe a favorite world or most unique world. Normally I don't like snow levels, but for me it was the like the blizzardy world. I just thought it was actually pretty cool and pretty unique, and to see it done, like a snow type level done, or like a world done so well, I personally really enjoyed it. So that was my favorite.
How about you, Russell?
I actually really like the jungle levels. Like I thought those were so great. And the monkeys had so much character. Like the monkeys really had a ton of character to them. And I like the music. Like it was so peppy and energetic and fun. And of course there were watermelons with bullets, and they were very like, I just thought those had the most, I don't know, they just felt the most fun. Like they just felt fun because of the flow of it, and because the music was so up, and because everything really moved the very like comforting pace. I don't know. The jungle levels just felt great. They just felt well done, even if they weren't the most. I think like the first few levels were definitely the most like put together. Like you have it actually, funny enough, now that I think about it, kind of mirrors the original Mario. You have your above ground level, you have your below ground level, then you have a third one that's like kind of weird and like has things that are falling, and yeah, it had a lot of things there, but then the jungle level just felt good. Like good level design, done well, interesting enemies, interesting things that happened that were just done nicely. Mostly that music. The music just like, perfect. So good.
Chef's kiss.
You actually, that was going to be my choice, Russell, the jungle. So
I loved the first
copyright
level.
striking.
The very first level, just perfect. Yep, nothing wrong. Everything just can't be beat. Rolling rocks and crap. Yes.
No, but yeah, for all the reasons that you said, aesthetically, it's just a really cool design. I really love the monkeys in there. That is also some of the more challenging platforming in the whole game, I think, is in that world. When you're trying to navigate those monkeys, which are, I think, some of the most aggressive enemies, like basic enemies that you face in the game.
Yeah.
Despite how like goofy the idea of them is, it's like they have projectiles and they know how to use them. They're basically using the same tools that you have, like with the watermelons. So like if they get to the watermelon first, then they're going to use it against you.
Yeah.
So like that was pretty cool. As a runner-up, I'll choose anytime you're underground. The crystal caves and stuff like that. I think that's really cool.
I found those levels to have like a lot of like, they had great mechanics, like the crumbling pillars and like the rolling rock mechanics and the kind of like the soft clay you can bash through. Really cool. I just didn't enjoy them, which is funny because I love the music of those. Like again, the music for the caves was great too, but I think there was just kind of like that very like multi-directional navigation that made those levels occasionally a little like confusing and not as flowy as the above ground levels. Also, the platforming was always very like jump to a pillar about accuracy versus just like trying to jump over shy guys and eat things and throw eggs. They were good though. They were good. I think not my favorite, but definitely well designed. It's kind of like, underwater levels. They're usually not fun, but they're part of a game.
I just really liked the look of like the rock structures, the aesthetic of the rolling chain chomp statue, as well as like the little mushrooms that you could find in there. And sometimes they weren't little; they were big. You were like actually walking on them. So I thought that was really cool. I also really like the snow levels too. I agree. It's hard to find a snow mechanic or ice mechanic in a game, like you said, Joel. That's like actually worth playing or fun to play.
You get to go skiing. That's tight.
Yeah, that's really dope.
I was gonna say I totally forgot about this, but like it's the first 3 levels are snowy ice levels, and then you end up at the fortress, and then you're in the sky, and then you're in the castle. And I had totally forgotten about that, but that is also such a cool progression to kind of start in the valley, in the snow valley, and then work your way up and eventually make it to the castle. And then your final fight is with Raphael the Raven on the moon. So it's like this verticality of on the icy plains going all the way up to the moon. Pretty cool, actually. I never actually had thought about it until I looked at the actual level progression.
That's an interesting point.
Started from the bottom, now we here. That's what Yoshi said.
Then you come down from the moon and you just go right back to your island.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That was fun. Time to go back home.
And I'm back.
Are there any values or themes that you think the game is trying to get across?
Don't lose your baby.
Yeah, don't lose your baby. Yeah.
That's a good one. If you learn anything from a video game, it's probably the most important.
Don't panic because it only makes things worse. That's what I garnered from this game, because every time I would go into panic mode trying to get Baby Mario back, it would just make it worse because I would be super erratic and start hitting other enemies. And then it would bounce me back and I'd lose more time, and then eventually they'd take Baby Mario away. So keep your cool. That's the lesson I learned.
The government came and took your baby?
Yeah, the Bowser government. Doug Bowser took my baby.
I think I definitely got like a It Takes a Village kind of vibe.
Yeah.
From the way that the Yoshis are constantly like trading off Mario.
I can totally
you take
see
him
that.
for a bit. Okay, you take him for a bit. Well, that was kind of a neat touch. Like I can't think of any other reason other than just to give a visual variety of the colors of Yoshi for them to constantly trade off.
I thought it was cool too. Were there other Yoshis before this game? Did Yoshi's story come out before this?
No, Yoshi's Story was 64, but in Super Mario World was the first technical introduction of Yoshi as far as the Mario franchise goes. And there were different colored Yoshis that you could find as babies and then feed them enemies until they grew up.
Oh, right. Okay, so that's why this is okay. That makes sense. I thought,
and I think some of them had like different powers, like slightly different abilities.
Okay, yeah, that's really cool. I didn't know that. I didn't know there was that connection in Mario World. I never actually finished Super Mario World.
The fireball
Yoshi. Do that.
The fireball Yoshi is so badass, yeah. But then the blue one gets wings. That's pretty cool.
Oh, that's tight.
Yeah.
As far as other themes go, I think those are the big ones for me, and I think I hadn't even thought about it, but I like that idea that you brought up of It Takes a Village. Teamwork makes the dream work. Like clearly, maybe they weren't strong enough to make the full journey, one of them on their own, but together they were able to kind of baton Baby Mario to the finish line. It's pretty cool.
Although I do think it's a bit of a missed opportunity that they didn't end up like all ganging up on Bowser at the end.
Oh, yeah.
Like if we could have found a way to make that work, that would have been neat. Like after you land one hit, maybe one of the Yoshis gets knocked out and it looks like Baby Mario is just fluttering around and it was out of your control. So you're like, what the heck? But before the counter even goes down, another Yoshi jumps in and grabs him and you take control of that Yoshi for a while. And then you work through like 4 or 5 Yoshis.
I think you need to go back in time and pitch this, because I think this is a much better idea than the final boss fight that they had put in the game. Not that it was bad, but I like this idea a lot. And they could have implemented it in the same boss fight.
Right. Keep everything else the same.
Yeah.
I'm just seeing like a big anime fight of just every Yoshi just like jumping in, throwing a big old hit at Bowser as they like bounce Mario around.
Just showing how pointless Mario is in the game.
Dude, Mario is useless. I mean, other than the little power up that he gets, but that's so rare. Yeah, he's kind of
It's just the
He's
final hit is
baggage.
I'm just like chucking Mario straight into Bowser.
more effective that way than he is.
A pretty good time to start wrapping up, I think. But the last question that we have here is: do you guys have any bits of trivia that you'd like to share?
Oh yeah, I did my homework and I found a piece of trivia. It's not the craziest thing, but I did think it was pretty interesting as far as the naming convention goes for the game. Where's my trivia? Oh, there it is. Okay, so this is on the Mario wiki that I was looking at all the levels and bosses on, but it says Super Mario Bros. 5 was originally supposed to be a subtitle for the Japanese Super Mario World 2, Yoshi's Island, similar to how Super Mario Bros. 4 was made the subtitle for Super Mario World in Japan, which makes total sense. And I've always wondered too why they decided to just break the numbering system that they had with one, Super Mario Bros., Super Mario Bros. 2, then 3. So it sounds like it was 4. Super Mario World was 4 in Japan, and then they were thinking about doing it or 5 in Japan, but then I guess for some reason they didn't. So whoever made that call, I'd be very interested to know why they decided to not do it one way or the other. But that's the only trivia that's even listed. I'm surprised there's not more.
I found one that was really interesting. I was having trouble finding like legit articles on it, so hopefully I'll be able to find some soon. But today I was just doing some Googling, and somewhere on a list, apparently there was, back at the game's release, there was a giant egg promotion at Toys R Us, and basically how that worked was it was one of the Toys R Us's in California, Culver City, California. It was on October 5th, 1995 at 3 p.m. All this information.
Oh, that's incredible.
But basically how it worked was that there was this giant plastic Yoshi egg that they had there, and kids who showed up would be given these tiny little green plastic hammers and encouraged to smack the egg in a specific spot until eventually the egg crumbled and fell apart, and inside of it was, I think, a giant like replica cartridge of Super Mario World 2 Yoshi's Island. And the coolest thing about it that I was reading was that apparently they would donate $500 to any school whose principal would agree to come and sit on the egg for 15 minutes.
That is amazing.
Which I thought was pretty cool.
Dude, I would have man, me as a kid, I would have loved to have been there.
No, I was 4 years old at the time. I would have been all over that. Like,
been awesome. That's a cool piece of trivia. That's actually one of my favorite things, is like just the different things local game stores like GameStop used to do for midnight launches and game releases. Because it seemed like every GameStop was different. Like some of them would throw events, some would have, and prizes would be different at various GameStops depending on which one you went to. So I miss that, actually. I know there's no point for that anymore because so much of what is released is digital.
Right.
But it was kind of like one of those fun every now and then occasions where, like, I would go with my brothers to various releases. I think we were at like Halo 4. We went to I don't even know why we went to this, but me and my youngest brother used to be really into Call of Duty, so we'd go to the Call of Duty releases. And looking back, I feel like it was such a time sink, but I had fun. I think it's always been about, for me, FPSs have always been about like the social aspect of hanging with your friends and playing. But all that to say, I just miss that in person, like seeing what the games, different stores are going to do for a release. And I love that they did the giant egg.
Yeah, I think that was, when I read that was really cool. I was like, I kind of wish I had been able to see that. But yeah, I missed that too. It's another one of those things that's just kind of dying about gaming, as many other things are being born in the world of gaming. So I guess, trade-offs, but yeah, that is something that I'm going to be missing going forward unless they bring it back to some capacity.
I mean, they probably do it still sometimes, but it's so rare now. And especially once, it used to be that you would actually have to wait till midnight here on the West Coast, and then they started doing 9 p.m. releases. on the West Coast because they were just saying like, well, it's 12 a.m. on the East Coast, so we'll just do 9 p.m. here, or 12 a.m. on the East Coast. But that also kind of changed things, right? Because then there's like, okay, it's only 9 p.m. here. It's like it's not as exciting, I guess, when you're younger, like in high school or even like middle school, to be like, oh man, I'm gonna wait with my friends till 12 a.m. out in the cold in front of GameStop, and we're gonna bring our like handhelds and just play games for 4 or 5 hours while we wait. That was kind of hype. It was like super fun at the time.
Totally. Hey, how about you, Russell? Did you have any trivia?
I don't believe I do, actually. Unfortunately, I couldn't find anything trivia related with this game other than just, yeah, I think, all right. I need to look into this because I believe that several of the enemies in Yoshi's Island have carried across to several of the Mario games without existing in any of the other Mario franchise games. And I'm trying to think which ones they are. But I'd have to look into that. But I do not have any additional trivia, unfortunately.
That was a very last minute question that I added just a couple of hours before this recording. So like, in an ideal world, I would have given you guys more time. But I think what we came up with was really good. I'm already willing to call this episode a major success.
Yay!
Hell yeah. Sorry, I just found another full page of trivia, but yes, big success.
We could put that in the description.
Yeah, okay, I'll link you to it.
Or unless did you see one that you really want to share real quick? Or?
There was one that was kind of cool. It was saying that real life writes the plot. That's like the subheader, and it says, notice how in the game and successive Yoshi themed games that if you complete a level or a game with top marks, you get a red flower drawn on your results. This is actually a tradition in Japan dating back to primary schools, where if the teacher is especially pleased with your work, you get a flower circle drawn on the paper. So essentially it's the Japanese version of getting a gold star in America.
Oh, interesting.
So that's why they give you the flower emblem. It's like, you did incredible. Good job.
Wow, that's so cool.
But I'll send you the page. There's actually quite a few on here that I just found.
Yeah. Wow. Well, guys, this has been really fun. Thank you so much for being here. Joel, thanks for returning. And Russell, I'm so glad that we got to have you on. I've been looking forward to having you on for a while. And of course, this is only the first of many times you're going to be on.
Yay, finally. Always a little hard with the work schedule.
No, yeah, but I think recording digitally or virtually this is the first episode we're doing like this, which I didn't even mention up until this point of the recording. But anybody at home, if you hadn't figured it out, like, yeah, the reason that this episode sounds a little bit different or is formatted a little bit different is that we're actually doing it over Zoom, and just sort of testing the waters with this. It cuts down on commutes and just makes scheduling so much easier. So I think that this worked out really well.
I agree. Yeah, and I think I have to, before we wrap up, I have to give everyone my favorite catchphrase from Super Mario, and that is Yahoo!
Yes, mine is let's go.
Ouija time, Yahoo!
Whip boo and shit, yeah.
Whip
Actually, mine's the whip womp.
Whip whoop.
Whip womp.
Pudding pop.
Pudding pop. Pudding pop?
Thanks again, John. This is awesome.
Oh no, thank you both.
Great.
This is really great, and I'm so glad we could do this. Looking forward to many more to come.
Me too.
In the meantime, this has been the Book Club But Gaming Podcast, episode 9. And all of you listening at home, please go ahead and like, follow, and subscribe on whatever platform you're finding us on. And until next time, stay nerdy.
Doug Bowser took my baby.